Welcome in, Bleav in Commanders podcast, part of the Bleav Network, and we are brought to you by FanDuel. Scott Jackson, former Washington Redskin, number 13, Anthony Armstrong, and the man in the middle, the voice of the Washington Commanders, Bram Weinstein, after 2 days of training camp, getting a Friday off or just a walkthrough, a chill-out day. Bram, thanks for joining us. How you doing, buddy?
Not only just today off, Sunday off too. This is a new world. This is a totally new world. They're done practicing at 10 o'clock, 10:30 in the morning. We get, after 2 days, well, they're practicing. We're just not allowed in. Sunday, they're off. This is a whole new world to me.
Man, you get to rest and, it's kind of your build-up period, your ramp-up period for you as well, so you don't got to go yell and scream so much. First couple of days in, what have your impressions been? How's the energy been down there in Ashburn? Just overall, what are you seeing?
It's been really good. Got chippy on day 2. I was actually somewhat surprised by that. Bill Croskey-Merritt had the ball ripped out of his arms by Mike Sanders still. Guys are pushing around, a little bit. So I kind of like that. The energy is really different. It's been a big topic this year because it was clear last year. I think this is just a very different camp. Like last year, off of I think they just ended up in, we're going to run it back for a lot of reasons that we don't need to go through, but they did. And so we walked into camp and they're off at 12-5. And they have a lot of veterans on the team, and there's really no jobs on the line whatsoever. Like, you could not find anything on the roster where there was like a true competition to be a starter or primary performer, maybe with like some mild exceptions like back end stuff. And I think that carried over into practice. And then Terry's holding and all these injuries and everything just kind of like, it just went the wrong way in terms of just kind of energy heading into a season. And this is just completely different. Like the rookie camp in the spring felt like a training camp practice. The mini camps were very high energy. It's kind of rolled in here. They're very chippy with one another. There's chip on their shoulder. And this is a little like 24. It's just a lot of new people here, like a lot, especially on defense. There's so many new faces. There's 2 new schemes. The offense is a work in progress, but that's fine. I think that's fine. It's been a really interesting couple of days. We've got jobs on the line. We got roster spots on the line. We've got not just whether this guy's going to make the roster or not, but are they going to be a primary performer? Are they going to be someone that they profile? Like that's on the line. So I really do feel like this is a very, very, very different experience. It's kind of you could feel it through the first couple of days.
Well, let's start with the quarterback and, under center from the spring to under center now, what little bit you've seen to this point of the offense. Do they look like they're picking it up quicker? Does it look like this is something that is certainly going to be in their wheelhouse of comfort?
So it better be, because they're playing Philadelphia and Dallas in the first 2 weeks,
right.
Seattle in the first 3 weeks. So I really think the clock is ticking, obviously, on them to kind of get it right, considering what the schedule is at the beginning of the season. Jayden doesn't say very much, but I actually thought it was really eye-opening for him to say, I feel a lot better about this offense now than I did in the spring, which if you went to these practice, again, everybody's in shorts. No one's going full speed. Hitting's been negotiated out of all of these practices. So it's a different experience when you watch it. But it was clear that these guys were really adjusting to David Blough's offense. The timing wasn't quite there. And I would say through the first couple of days, while everyone keeps talking about the defenses ahead because they've had a couple of picks and a couple of big moments and wow moments and all that stuff, I actually have seen progression on offense. I think I don't like that Nick Allegretti got hurt. It's going to miss some time because I think that's an open competition there. I don't think he's going to be out for a long period of time, but it's strained calves. He's not going to be back in a couple of days, obviously. But I have seen a different level of timing in the spring. So that's actually been a really good sign, even if the defense is somewhat ahead right now. I love watching them move the parts around. I mean, that just was not happening for the last couple of years. But there might be a role for Ben Sinnott that's very different than it was. What they do with Okonkwo is going to be very interesting. He's a total movable part. He could double as a big wide receiver and a tight end. Terry's moving around. Antonio Williams has been very impressive in his route running and being able to separate. So it's a long way of just saying, I think it's a little people are saying, the defense is way ahead. I agree, but I don't think this doesn't feel like it did last year where I'm what's going on here? This didn't feel right. This feels like it's growing and kind of coming together. And I actually kind of liked what I saw in day 2 from the offense.
Yeah. When I was hearing Terry McLaurin speak, he was talking about just a rep that he made with Jayden, but they were talking about making a small tweak or change to make it be an even bigger play, just like a catch and run versus a catch and tackle. I think what you're seeing is just an offense that is learning as they go, right? They've had a summer together out in LA, getting more of the timing down, and now they're having to, live workshop it, if you will. So I'm glad Jayden likes the offense better now. It's probably more robust now. It's grown. You're starting to see, hey, now here's our counterpunch to this, or here's some other things that we can unlock. Speaking with the receivers, how do you see that room going? Obviously, there's the outside chatter, bringing in somebody else. Stefon Diggs working out up there in Maryland at College Park, looking ready to go. But then there's still a lot of competition just inside the room as it is now. Jaden Bradley's getting some after camp tutoring from Terry McLaurin, and just so much going on. You mentioned Antonio, just how you see that room working out, especially with those guys in the middle of the pack, my tier 2 guys like McCaffrey and crew.
Yeah, I think obviously Terry's number 1. And then if we're just going to call him number 3 for just the purposes of this conversation, Antonio Williams is number 3. He's going to be a day 1 performer, probably inside out slot performer. You can move him to the outside, but they're going to utilize him. I think they're going to move him around. And, he's got this, I know nobody wants to be compared this way, but he's got this Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of feel to him where it's very quick route running, same build, good hands. So I think hopefully he's him. That'd be nice if that works out that way. That'd be real nice. So we're really talking about the outside receiver, who is the secondary outside receiver? And, we can have a discussion about how deep is the need, because if they're going to throw the ball to Terry McLaurin 8 to 10 times a game and Okonkwo 5 times a game and Rashad White certainly, 3 to 5 times a game, and maybe Bill, if they can pressure him to catch the ball a little more out of the backfield, which they seem to be doing. And then, Sinnott gets a catch here, Bates gets a catch here, Williams gets a few targets. How many targets are we talking about at this position? What are we really talking about? But I will hear the argument that if you don't have a leveled up ceiling of talent on that side of the ball, the coverage is rolled to McLaurin, and you just don't want that to happen. You want him to be able to make plays. So I'll hear out all of the arguments for it. Right now, going into camp, Burks and Dyami Brown felt like they were kind of in this, I don't know if battle's the right word for it, but they would be the quote unquote tandem or committee, add Luke McCaffrey to that, and of the 3 that would probably, and potentially Van Jefferson because of his veteran, how many years he's been around the league and the hands and all that stuff, that they would be the ones that would kind of fill that void. Burks already hurt his foot. He missed yesterday. He has a history, so when it's someone like Allegretti and you're the guy doesn't get hurt very often, you don't really think much about it, but Burks has had, unfortunately, a history of getting hurt. I think there's a real opportunity for him. He's a high level ceiling athlete, and he'd been getting most of the run. You had mentioned Jaden Bradley. We can talk about him later because he's my candidate for summertime hero. He's going to be the 5 touchdowns in 3 preseason games guy. He's really stood out, totally stood out. But of those ones, that's where we're at. And I think even just a little, even if it's minor with Burks, I do think it puts a lot more pressure on Adam Peters and company to go, okay, do we really need to add something here? And Diggs is available. There is no complications with another team or weird social media. There are some outside legal issues. I think that I'm sure everybody would like to see clarified with him, but on the field, you don't hear any problems about him. If you go ask New England last year or Buffalo for years, they call him a great teammate. He's obviously a primetime performer towards the end of his career, 33. So I don't know how much you're asking for here. I'm sure somewhat of the pitch to him is you can play for your hometown team. I don't know what that means in dollars and cents. And frankly, he hasn't signed with anybody yet, and I don't know why, because I don't know what he's asking for. Now that Debo's off the market at the number he's at, I wonder if that's kind of where they're putting a baseline for Diggs and see if he's happy with that. I think he'd be an upgrade for them if they go and do it. But I just don't know what he's asking for. And frankly, 2 days into camp, I'm a little surprised he's not somewhere. So I don't know what's up with that.
It is Bleav in Commanders. We are brought to you by FanDuel, part of the Bleav Network. Scott Jackson, Anthony Armstrong, and the voice of the Commanders, Bram Weinstein, in the middle talking with us. You brought up the thing about Burks that worries me as well with the injury early. They kind of went through this with Noah Brown, right? For a year and a half. You love what you saw, the big body and all that stuff, but then staying on the field was an issue. Some of the back end guys you mentioned, like a Van Jefferson. Obviously Dyami Brown knows Jayden Daniels very well, so he's been here with him. Those kind of guys, but sometimes it comes down to obviously special teams, right? Like with those last few guys, if you're keeping 6 or 7, I don't know what the numbers. Heck, when Anthony played one of the years with Shanahan, what did they keep, like 9 receivers? It was insane. How many wide receivers they kept.
I wasn't one of the 9, mind you. I was not one of the 9.
but I got to imagine like a guy like Jalen Lane and McCaffrey, this is how they firm up their roster spot, right? Because they are at least both returners in addition to, 2 receivers that you drafted over the last couple seasons.
Yeah, we haven't seen kickoff return. I want to see who that is. I have a feeling it's going to be McCaffrey and Bill, but I don't totally know yet because, that's a whole different ball game now. These one-cut slasher runners can make big plays. Ekeler was amazing at it a couple of years ago, and Debo was really, really good at it a year ago. So I'll just have to see who goes, I would assume, with McCaffrey, and then Lane obviously is their primary punt returner. So that roster spot's totally secure. Anthony, how many years did you play in the league?
I'm credited with like 4. I give myself 6, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did it click for you where you actually felt comfortable and thought like, okay, I kind of understand what my role is and I can kind of excel at that role? At what point did it click for you?
Honestly, it wasn't until about that 2010 off season, when I was getting used the right way. I had started in 08 down in Miami. So I was just trying to stay afloat. The league's going fast, the practices are fast. You're trying to figure out just what this is. So it wasn't until 2010. It took me a couple of years. Before I was actually comfortable.
I asked that because I think Dyami Brown is in a really interesting position in his career right now. Like he was a pretty high draft pick, second round pick if I remember right, second or third round pick if I remember right, but he was a high draft pick. And he came in and the opportunities weren't there initially. And then the numbers kind of weren't there. And there was some inconsistency that was going on, but he stuck around. And all along, he's been a really willing participant on special teams. He's a very good blocker. Like he's an aggressive player, and obviously he's got a lot of speed. And then he blew up in the postseason after they lost all those, in the postseason a couple of years ago, and earned him a really big paycheck in Jacksonville. And it didn't, they didn't get the results they were looking for. And so he takes a major haircut financially to come back here. But I actually think it was a really smart move. And I feel like, and maybe this is just optimistically, I'm feeling this way about it. Like a lot of guys might have kind of quit or kind of given up, after all the years of not being the guy or finding the role. And I don't see that with him. Like he was one of them that's going out to California and posting about it. Like he's happy to be back here. He's at a point in his career where he's either going to find a role or he's going to fizzle out because he's getting to kind of that age now. And I really feel like that I'm just being optimistic about it, but I have a feeling that the way he kind of connected with Jayden a couple of years ago, he might be more of an answer at that number 2 spot than I think people are kind of giving him credit for. He's got the speed, he's got the hands, he's got the relationship. And I just feel like he's at a point in his career where he understands who he is and how he can contribute. And that's what I really like about him in this role. Like, is he Devontae Smith? No, I'm not like pretending he's Devontae Smith, but could he be someone they lean on and get 30 to 40 catches out of him? Yeah. Like, I actually think that that's a possibility this year.
I think so too. And it is big when you go and you leave and you don't have that same success, and you the grass ain't always greener. Right? The money's greener, but the grass wasn't any greener when he got over there. So he's coming back, and Dan Quinn talked about it. The relationship was there as soon as they got back in the OTAs, and he was surprised by that. The biggest thing that I want to see from Dyami is getting off press consistently, right? You have to just do everything else consistently. Last year they used you as a deep threat or as a guy to run screens, and I wanted him to do everything else in between. So we're going to see how he can grow with that. And frankly, he's got to do some extra steps. He's got to put some things out there, Scott, to see why he can be on this team and give a little roles, kind of like over at ZipRecruiter, where you can use their new profile, Bram, to put in why you, as a hirer, as an employee, I guess, applicant, should get this job and what you're interested about it. So Dyami would say, I have a relationship with the quarterback. I could take pressure off of Terry McLaurin, can put the ball in the end zone, and I've got a good feel he's got a couple of good celebrations in the bag if he does reach the end zone this year. But I'll tell you this much, ZipRecruiter has this new feature, like I said, where the most interested and qualified candidates are going to be shown to you right away, Bram. It's their powerful matching technology is going to help you find your qualified candidates quickly, and it's no wonder they're the number one hiring site based on G2. So make sure y'all do this, folks. Try ZipRecruiter and meet new candidates, the great new candidates over there on your website who will take the extra step to get your job. Let them know why they want you. Candidates can tell you in their own words why they're interested. You're going to try it for free today at ZipRecruiter.com/audio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter.
Yeah, we do appreciate them helping us out here on Bleav in Commanders, brought to you by FanDuel as well, and part of the Bleav Network. Bram Weinstein, voice of the Commanders, joining myself, Scott Jackson, and Anthony Armstrong on this episode. All right, let's talk running backs before we kick it over to the defense a little bit before we let you go, Bram. But what are your thoughts there? I know it's early; they're not in pads, so especially a guy like Katron Allen, probably his special skill set isn't really being shown off in shorts and shells. But what have you seen early on? Anybody stood out to you in that position?
So, every time someone asks about Bill, like somehow Dan Quinn talks about Rashad White. So I'm keeping just a little bit of an eye about on all of that. White obviously is a tremendous receiver out of the backfield, right? He should be a big help for them in the screen game, bare minimum. And then he can run between the tackles too. But I've kind of, pictured this, it's more like a tandem, these two, and that the big play running back, at least the personification of it is Croskey-Merritt. Like he's got the big play ability, but they don't talk about him like he's in that position. So I think they've been trying to kind of publicly motivate him. One, they want him better in pass protection. Two, they'd like to see him catch the ball out of the backfield a little bit more. Maybe he won't be as strong at it as Rashad White is, who seems to be a specialist at this, but they want that aspect in his game. So they've been publicly talking about that with him. With Allen, I'm with you. I don't think we've seen enough. Like, I want to see him in pads, because he screams short yard specialist, touchdown vulture, get a lead in the third quarter, put him out there for a series, try to run some clock, grind out a couple of first downs, like that type of player. But we just haven't seen it yet, and listen, I think Jerome Ford's a pro, man. And he's got a hard time making the team, but he's a total pro. So I'm interested to see. And they love McNichols. So again, this is a very, very crowded room. There isn't another one undrafted free agent. We talked about Jayden Bradley for a minute. Robert Henry is someone they like. He's smaller, scat-backy, 5'9", can move. And I think they like him and they like his profile. So he's someone to watch too. Screams practice squad because it's so, crowded at this position, but he's a name to watch this summer too.
Well, you mentioned practice squad in the opening press conference. They mentioned not just the 53, they talk about the whole 70 because they're considering the practice squad players as guys that are on the roster. So that kind of helps you play with the numbers game a little bit, because if there's somebody that's on the line, you don't necessarily have to go to another team. They may feel that the situation here in Washington is a little bit better, even if they are on practice squad, which is pretty cool.
53-man roster paycheck is different than the practice.
It is different. It is different. It is different. But hey, but I can tell you, you go to a team and then you inactive, you be pissed off, right? You be pissed off. And maybe a little bit more, have a little more money in the bank, but still, I digress. Defensive side, green dot, man. Where do you think it's going to go, and does it really matter where it lands at the end of the day?
You tell me. Do you think that matters?
I personally don't, because I was saying this. On offense, everybody looks to the quarterback because he has the call to play. But on defense, even if it's the linebacker that's calling the play, all they have to do is hear it from the coach and then tell everybody, and be sure they're going to move some people around, but the secondary is going to line back up and they're going to make their own calls and checks between each other. The front, Deron and Owe may say, hey, let's run a game right here, right? They may have their own thing that they're doing. So I don't think it makes a big deal to sit there and go and say Sonny Styles is our green dot. I think that's more for the outside. Everybody else wants to hear who has the green dot. I'm not going to think Sonny Styles is a failure if he doesn't have the green dot.
No, I feel like a little bit with Sonny Styles that this is just the one thing that they could put out there to say earn it, I suppose. Because obviously he's, like when you see him, especially in person, they're just guys that are different, and he's different. He screams, this guy's a first round pick, when you see him. And I'm excited about him. But from the, understanding the scheme to communicating it to his teammates, I understand that's a big deal. And so the way they've positioned it is we want somebody who's going to be out on the field a lot to be wearing that, which obviously that needs to be the case, which would then suggest that styles might not be part of every package, which I don't totally believe at this point. So I have a feeling it's just like, earn it. If it's not him, I would think it's Louvu. And if it's not Louvu, then I would think it might be Nick Cross. I think he's an underrated signing for them in the offseason. He's been very noticeable. I think he likes this defense. You can kind of feel it. I know he likes being home. He's a Maryland guy. I just can feel it with him that like he's a movable part. He's up near the line. He's back. He's an aggressive player. They got a lot of parts here that work. But for the green dot stuff, like I assume in the end Styles gets it, but I think they want him to earn it.
Bram Weinstein's with us, voice of the Commanders. Your Bleav in Commanders brought to you by FanDuel, part of the Bleav Network. Safety position is one we talked a ton about in the offseason. You mentioned Nick Cross with his addition. Will Harris, who was very effective when he was on the field, just wasn't on the field enough last year. And then, of course, there's, Quan Martin. Like, how does he fit in to this? We know Jeremy Reeves has a big role. Obviously, he's a special team standout. But what have you seen so far there? And again, could we see three of these guys in the field at once on a lot of occasions?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I think three safeties is a distinct possibility. That's what Minnesota did. They did a lot of that a year ago. Like they only had two corners on the field a lot. So I don't know that Durante Jones is following directly in the footsteps of Brian Flores, but if he is, that's a possibility here that you won't see a ton of corners. That said, I know they love Amik Robinson in the slot, and so, three corners, maybe a little more often here than maybe in Minnesota might make sense. Nick Cross, again, I love Nick Cross and the addition there. It's day 2, so I don't want to I probably shouldn't even say this because it probably means nothing. But when the starters were on the field for the 11-on-11 stuff, it was Cross and Jeremy Reeves who were the two safeties who were out there with the primary starters. So, does that necessarily mean anything? I don't know. I don't know whether that means anything or not. But he was. And so, I think they really like having. Are we done moving around? Okay.
It's like Hollywood Squares here. Sorry.
Up on the deck.
Yeah. I feel like someone took my seat and I'm out of the game. All right. So I think Quan Martin's an interesting one. I think it's probably getting around to Quan Martin's an interesting one. When the starters were out there, and I don't know, again, I don't want to assign too much meaning to it, and it's Cross and Reeves instead of Cross and Harris. And maybe they're just, working around some combinations and all that stuff because I'm not worried about Will Harris not making the team. You just wonder what Quan's role is in all of that. And so I don't see him as a candidate to not be on the team at this point, but he's clearly a little lower in the pecking order. And so there kind of needs to be three safeties on the field. And if there are, Reeves has become such a physical presence. And I know they love him in the locker room that I don't know that he wouldn't be the third safety that was on the field a lot of the time too. So that's a position group obviously to watch.
Yeah, that's gonna come down to tackling and who can get their hands on the football. I heard the young undrafted safety got a little pick six on day 2. So if you're able to create havoc, and I can imagine it's gonna be hell having to block an aggressive safety in the slot. I don't want to do that. I'd rather block Amik Robertson. No disrespect. Nick Cross or Amik Robertson. Please let me block the smaller guy. So having Nick Cross at the line of scrimmage, all them tackles for loss last year that he had in Indianapolis, that could be a pretty dangerous package, Scott.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you know what? I love that Luvu's back playing a more natural spot here. I mean, some of it was out of necessity. They tried to turn him into a stand-up defensive end because they ran out of them a year ago. And so, unfortunately, he was put in a position to fail. But that was out of necessity. There wasn't much they could do about it. They just got so ravaged with injuries. But this time around, I like where he is too. So, he's also in a contract year. So I'm hoping for a big bounce back year from him playing in a position where he's most comfortable, which is go run downhill and go get the guy with the ball.
Yeah, love him that way. All right, Bram, we'll let you go, man. Voice of the Commanders. Appreciate your time and looking forward to seeing these guys get the pads on. We'll have a lot more to talk about then.
All right. See you tomorrow.
All right, sounds good. For Anthony Armstrong, Scott Jackson, and Bram Weinstein, Bleav in Commanders, brought to you by FanDuel. We are part of the Bleav Network. Please like, comment, and follow, and we will catch you next episode.